You know what's worse than being unhappy? It's when nothing brings you joy anymore. Not the things that used to light you up. Not the hobbies you invested years into. Not even the moments that should feel good. You go through the motions, you check the boxes, but inside, nothing. Just quiet emptiness. If you're over 50 and you've noticed this happening, this slow draining of pleasure from life, you're not losing your mind. You're experiencing something philosophers and psychologists call anhedonia. And here's what most people miss. This isn't clinical depression. It's something subtler, something that sneaks up on you. One day you realize the coffee doesn't taste as good. The sunset doesn't move you. The conversation feels flat. And you think, what's wrong with me? Alan Watts understood this problem better than almost anyone. The British philosopher who brought Eastern wisdom to Western audiences spent his life exploring why we lose touch with joy, and more importantly, how to get it back. What he discovered will completely change how you see this emptiness you're feeling. In the next 23 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why nothing brings you joy anymore, using Alan Watts' most powerful insights. You'll understand the paradox that's been sabotaging your happiness, how your own mind creates distance from pleasure, and most importantly, the practical path back to experiencing genuine joy, not the forced positivity nonsense. Real, spontaneous aliveness. If this resonates with you, click that like button now to help us reach more people who need to hear this. Let's dive in. Let's start by naming what's actually happening here, because understanding the problem is half the solution. Anhedonia is the clinical term for the inability to feel pleasure. But I'm not talking about the severe version that comes with major depression. I'm talking about something more common, more insidious, and far less discussed, especially in people over 50. This is the kind where you're functional. You're not in bed, unable to move. You're still showing up to life. But somewhere along the way, the color drained out. The activities that used to energize you now feel like obligations. The hobbies you love feel hollow. Even good news lands flat. You hear yourself saying, "That's nice," when you know you should feel more. And the scary part, you can't quite pinpoint when it started. Here's why this happens specifically after 50, and why Alan Watts' philosophy is so crucial to understanding it. By the time you hit this age, you've accumulated decades of experience. You pursued goals, achieved some, failed at others. You've tasted success and disappointment. And somewhere in all that living, you developed something Watts called the spectator consciousness. You started watching your life instead of living it. You became the person in the theater seat instead of the person on stage. This is different from clinical depression in a critical way. Depression often has biochemical roots and may need medical intervention. What we're talking about is more existential, more philosophical. It's not that your brain chemistry is broken. It's that your relationship with experience itself has become distorted. And that's actually good news, because it means the solution isn't necessarily pharmaceutical. It's philosophical. It's about relearning how to be present to your own life. And that's exactly where Alan Watts comes in with devastating clarity. Alan Watts was a British-American philosopher, writer, and speaker who became one of the most influential interpreters of Eastern philosophy for Western audiences. He died in 1973, but his insights into human consciousness and happiness remain startlingly relevant, maybe even more so today. Watts had this remarkable ability to take complex Buddhist and Taoist concepts and translate them in a language that cut straight to the heart of modern psychological suffering. And here's his central insight about why nothing brings you joy anymore. The very act of pursuing happiness makes it impossible to find. This is the paradox that's been destroying your ability to feel pleasure, and you probably didn't even know you were caught in it. Watts explained it with one of his most famous metaphors. Trying to grasp happiness is like trying to hold water by closing your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it escapes through your fingers. Think about what you've been doing. You've been trying activities that should make you happy. You've been seeking out experiences that are supposed to bring joy. You've maybe even followed advice about gratitude practices, positive thinking, finding your passion. And the whole time, there's this inner voice asking, am I happy yet? Is this working? Do I feel better? That voice, that constant evaluation, is the problem itself. It's the closed fist squeezing water. What would say you've turned happiness into a future goal, something to acquire or achieve? And in doing that, you've made it perpetually out of reach. Because joy isn't something you get to someday. It's not a destination at the end of pursuit. It's the natural state that emerges when you stop chasing it, stop evaluating whether you have it, and simply allow yourself to be fully present to what's happening right now. This is an abstract philosophy. This is the exact mechanism that's been killing your ability to feel pleasure. And once you see it, everything changes. Now let's get more specific about what's actually happening in your consciousness when you try to enjoy something and can't. Alan Watts called this the observer problem, and it's probably the most insidious joy killer you've never heard of. There's a part of your mind that constantly watches and comments on your experience. It's like having a critic in the back row of your consciousness, always evaluating, always judging, never just letting you be. You sit down to enjoy your morning coffee, and immediately this observer chimes in. Is this relaxing? Am I doing relaxation right? Should I feel more peaceful than this? You're at a beautiful vista, and instead of seeing it, you're thinking, this should move me. Why am I not moved? What's wrong with me that this doesn't feel profound? You're in conversation with a friend, and part of you is watching from outside, analyzing whether you're being present enough, wondering if you're truly connecting. The observer ruins everything by creating distance between you and direct experience. Here's the devastating part: what's identified. This observer is your ego trying to maintain control. Your ego wants to possess experiences, to evaluate them, to file them away as good or bad. It can't just let you dissolve into the moment, because that would mean temporarily losing its grip on identity. And for people over 50, this problem often intensifies. You've spent decades developing this observer, strengthening it through career evaluation, performance reviews, social comparison. You've been trained to constantly monitor and judge your own experience. So when you try to enjoy something now, you're not actually experiencing it directly. You're experiencing your thoughts about it. You're experiencing your judgment of whether you're experiencing it correctly. It's like trying to taste food while simultaneously writing a restaurant review in your head. The joy can't land because there's no one home to receive it, just this commentator blocking the door. Watts understood that to recover joy, you first have to recognize this observer and learn to gently dismiss it, not through force, but through a kind of relaxed awareness. And that's what we'll explore next. Here's where Alan Watts makes a distinction that changes everything about how you approach activities and experiences. There's a world of difference between pleasure as a goal and pleasure as a consequence. And most people over 50 have inadvertently turned every potentially joyful activity into the first kind, which guarantees failure. When pleasure is your goal, you approach an activity with expectation and demand. You're gardening to feel peaceful. You're meeting friends to feel connected. You're taking a walk to feel rejuvenated. You're reading to feel intellectually stimulated. And underneath all of it is this unspoken requirement. This better make me happy. This better fill the emptiness. That expectation creates tension. And joy cannot coexist with tension. They're mutually exclusive states. But when pleasure emerges as a consequence, as a natural byproduct of fully engaging with something for its own sake, it arrives effortlessly. You're gardening because you're curious about what the soil needs today. You're with friends because you're genuinely interested in what they're saying. You're walking because you want to feel your body move. You're reading because the ideas fascinate you. Notice the difference. There's no hidden agenda, no pressure to extract happiness from the activity. And paradoxically, that's when joy shows up uninvited. Watts would say that most of us have been trained backward. We've been taught that activities are means to ends, that everything should serve a purpose, deliver a payoff. We bring this instrumental thinking to everything, including pleasure itself. So we end up with this exhausting life where we're constantly using experiences to get something from them, rather than simply being with them. The practical application here is radical and uncomfortable. You need to go back through your hobbies, your social activities, your daily routines, and ask yourself honestly, am I doing this to feel better, or am I doing this because I genuinely want to do it right now? If it's the first one, you've set up a trap that guarantees disappointment. If it's the second one, joy might just sneak in the back door while you're not looking. Alan Watts spent years trying to communicate something that sounds simple, but is actually revolutionary for most people. The difference between thinking about life and actually experiencing it. And if you want to understand why nothing brings you joy anymore, this is ground zero. You've been living in your head, in concepts and evaluations, rather than in direct sensory contact with reality. When Watts talked about living in the now or being present, he wasn't peddling the kind of toxic positivity that tells you to just appreciate what you have and stop complaining. He wasn't selling generic mindfulness as a productivity tool. He was pointing to something much more fundamental. Most of us have lost the ability to simply perceive without immediately labeling, judging, and abstracting what we're perceiving. We've become so addicted to thinking about experience that we've forgotten how to have it. Here's what this looks like in practice. You're eating a meal, but you're not tasting it. You're thinking about whether it's healthy, whether you should be eating less, whether it tastes as good as the version you had last time, whether other people are enjoying their food more than you're enjoying yours. The actual sensation of flavor, texture, temperature on your tongue barely registers because you're too busy narrating the experience. Watts would say you're eating concepts about food rather than food itself. So how do you get back to direct experience? Not through effort, ironically, not through trying harder to be present. That just creates more mental activity, more observer consciousness. Instead, Watts suggested something closer to relaxation, to letting go of the compulsion to comment on everything. Try this right now. Notice the sensation of your body in your chair. Don't describe it. Don't evaluate whether it's comfortable. Just feel it. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Don't judge whether it's too hot or cold. Just sense it. That's direct experience. It's radical in its simplicity. And it's the doorway back to joy, because joy lives in sensation, not in thoughts about sensation. But here's the challenge. You've got decades of mental habits working against this. So it takes practice. Not the grim, disciplined kind. The playful, curious kind. Let's go deeper into why you can't stop evaluating every experience. Because until you understand the roots of this habit, you can't begin to release it. Alan Watts recognized that Western culture has systematically trained people to judge and measure everything, including things that are destroyed by judgment and measurement, like spontaneous joy. Think about how you were raised and educated. From childhood, you were constantly evaluated. Grades, performance reviews, social comparisons, achievements, failures. You learned that your value depended on how well you measured up to external standards. Then you entered the workforce, where evaluation intensified. Annual reviews, metrics, KPIs, benchmarks. By the time you're over 50, you've internalized this evaluative mindset so completely that you can't turn it off. It's running in the background of every experience, constantly asking, how am I doing? Is this good enough? Am I getting the results I should be getting? Here's the cost that Watts illuminated with painful clarity. Constant evaluation makes authentic experience impossible. You can't taste food while grading your tasting ability. You can't enjoy a conversation while monitoring your enjoyment level. You can't feel pleasure while judging whether you're feeling enough pleasure. The very act of measurement creates separation from the thing measured. It turns you into a subject observing an object, when joy only exists in the dissolution of that boundary. And here's what makes this especially relevant after 50. You've now got decades of evaluation habit embedded deep in your nervous system. It's not just mental anymore. It's somatic, automatic. You walk into a beautiful room, and before you consciously think anything, your body is already tensed slightly in preparation for evaluation. Your system is on alert. Quick, determine if this is good, bad, or neutral. This hypervigilance is exhausting. It's one of the main reasons you feel drained, even when you're supposedly relaxing. What's offered a practice that sounds almost too simple to work, but it's devastatingly effective. For 5 minutes a day, practice experiencing something without any evaluation whatsoever. Watch clouds without deciding if they're pretty. Listen to music without judging if it's good. Feel the water in your shower without determining if the temperature is right. Your mind will rebel. It will desperately want to categorize and comment. Let throw its tantrum, and gently, repeatedly, come back to pure sensation without judgment. This isn't about perfection. It's about weakening the tyranny of constant evaluation, one moment at a time. Here's something Alan Watt understood that most serious adults completely miss. The ability to take pleasure in simple things isn't childish or immature. It's actually a sign of profound wisdom and psychological health. But somewhere in your 50s, you might have absorbed the cultural message that sophisticated people don't get excited about small things. That's not sophistication. That's deadness. What's frequently contrasted two kinds of people: those who become so educated and refined that they can barely enjoy anything unless it meets some complex set of criteria, and those who've retained or rediscovered the capacity for simple, immediate delight. The second group isn't less intelligent. They're less imprisoned by abstraction. They haven't confused complexity with depth or critical analysis with wisdom. Think about what you've done with pleasure in your life. You've probably refined your tastes, developed preferences, learned what's good and what's common. You've maybe become someone who needs the right wine pairing, the perfect sunset lighting, the ideal conditions before you can relax. You've turned joy into something that requires elaborate setup and specific circumstances. What would say you've intellectualized pleasure right out of existence? You've made it so conditional that can barely survive. Here's the permission you need to hear. It's okay to be delighted by warm sunlight on your face. It's okay to laugh at a silly joke. It's okay to enjoy bad coffee if you're enjoying the moment of drinking it. It's okay to take pleasure in watching a bird or petting a dog or feeling grass under your feet. These aren't lesser pleasures that sophisticated people should have outgrown. They're direct experiences of aliveness. They're actually more real than the elaborate, carefully curated experiences you've been chasing. Watts himself loved talking about how Zen masters and Buddhist monks, people with profound philosophical understanding, could be absolutely delighted by the simplest things. A cup of tea, a flower, the sound of rain, not because they were simple-minded, but because they hadn't lost touch with direct perception. They hadn't erected all these conceptual barriers between themselves and immediate experience. That's what wisdom looks like. Not the inability to enjoy things unless they're impressive enough, but the ability to be fully present to whatever is actually happening. And if you've lost that, it's not because you've become more mature. It's because you've become more defended, more abstracted, more afraid of looking unsophisticated. That fear is costing you joy. Now let's bring this home with a practical framework based on Alan Watt's actual approach to recovering joy. This isn't theory anymore. This is what you do, starting today, to reconnect with your capacity for genuine pleasure. Watts didn't offer complicated systems because he knew complexity is part of the problem. Instead, he offered 3 simple but profound practices. First, stop trying to be happy. This sounds counterintuitive, but it's the foundation. For the next week, no, scratch that. Starting right now, drop the agenda of becoming happier. Stop evaluating whether activities are working to improve your mood. Stop treating experiences as tools for emotional management. Instead, approach activities with curiosity about the activity itself, not about what it will do for you. You're not gardening to feel peaceful. You're gardening to see what the soil feels like today, what the plants need, how your body moves through the tasks. The happiness will come or it won't, but it's no longer your job to manufacture it. Second, practice sensory attention without commentary. What's called this meditation in action, but you don't need to sit on a cushion. You do it while living. Pick one routine activity per day: washing dishes, walking to your car, making coffee, whatever, for that activity. Commit to experiencing it purely through your senses without the internal narrator. Feel the water temperature, hear the sounds, notice the movements. When your mind starts explaining, judging, planning, gently redirect attention back to direct sensation. Do this daily, not as a chore, but as an experiment in recovering direct perception. Third, allow purposeless enjoyment. This is where what was most radical. Most of us need permission to do things that serve no purpose, accomplish nothing, lead nowhere. So here's your permission. At least once per day, do something purely because it feels good in the moment, with zero justification required. Sit in the sun, watch clouds, listen to music you love, dance in your kitchen, pet your dog for 5 minutes longer than necessary. The key is doing it without any self-improvement agenda, without any sense that you should be doing something more productive. Just pure, unapologetic enjoyment of existing. Now here's the part that trips everyone up. You cannot measure your progress in recovering joy. The moment you start tracking whether you're feeling better, you've re-engaged the observer consciousness we've been trying to dissolve. You've turned this into another achievement project. So how do you know if it's working? You don't. You just keep practicing these 3 things with no attachment to outcome. And one day, probably when you're not looking for it, you'll notice you're genuinely laughing at something. Or you'll realize you just spent 20 minutes fully absorbed in an activity without once wondering if you should be doing something else. Or you'll catch yourself feeling a wave of simple contentment for no particular reason. That's when you'll know the water has started flowing again through your previously closed fist. So here's what Alan Watts taught us. Anhedonia after 50 isn't a life sentence. It's a message. It's your psyche telling you that you've been approaching experience backward, turning joy into a goal instead of allowing it to emerge as a consequence of presence. The observer consciousness that's been killing your pleasure isn't your enemy. It's just a habit that's outlived its usefulness. My challenge to you, pick one of those 3 practices today. Not all 3. That's achievement thinking again. Just one. Stop trying to be happy, or practice sensory attention without commentary, or allow yourself 5 minutes of purposeless enjoyment. That's it. No weekly plan, no progress tracking. Just today, just this moment, just this practice. If this video brought clarity, click that like button to help others find it. If you want more philosophy that actually changes how you live, subscribe to this channel. And tell me in the comments, which practice are you starting with today? Just one word: sensory, purposeless, or stop. I read every comment, and I'm genuinely curious. Talk soon.